Brother Thomas, a talented but socially awkward monk, works diligently in the scriptorium of the remote monastery of St. Jude, nestled in fog-shrouded mountains. He meticulously copies religious texts while secretly yearning to illustrate the long-abandoned Great Bestiary project, a comprehensive catalogue of all God's creatures. Abbot Severinus, a stern, elderly man with a reputation for strictness, assigns Thomas the mundane task of copying psalters, while other monks handle more prestigious, illuminated manuscripts. Thomas observes the monastery's daily rhythms: prayers at dawn, breakfast of thin porridge, work in the cold scriptorium, more prayers, meagre dinner, and solitary evenings. Brother Matteo, the only monk who shows Thomas kindness, encourages him despite his low status in the monastery hierarchy. During a violent storm, part of the monastery's ancient eastern wall collapses, revealing a previously unknown crypt entrance. Thomas, sent to assess the damage for repair records, discovers the hidden chamber while the other monks attend evening prayers. Drawn by curiosity, he descends the narrow stone stairs into the darkness. Using his candle, Thomas discovers the crypt contains ancient manuscripts and peculiar artifacts, including a small, ornate chest. Inside, he finds vials of shimmering ink that seems to move with a life of its own, black as night but glinting with stars when light catches it. Thomas impulsively pockets one vial before reporting the damage to Abbot Severinus, who appears unusually disturbed by news of the crypt's discovery and orders it sealed immediately. Unable to resist the allure of the mysterious ink, Thomas secretly begins working on the Great Bestiary at night, starting with a simple illustration of a sparrow using the shimmering ink. He notices how the ink flows differently than normal pigments, almost guiding his hand across the parchment. That night, as moonlight from the full moon streams through his small window at midnight, Thomas watches in astonishment as the sparrow illustration peels itself from the page, becoming a three-dimensional creature made entirely of ink and parchment. The tiny bird flutters around his cell before returning to the page at dawn. Terrified yet fascinated, Thomas realizes he has stumbled upon something magical and dangerous, something the Church would surely consider blasphemous or demonic. He resolves to continue experimenting but must keep his discovery secret, especially from the watchful Abbot Severinus. Seeking to understand the ink's properties without revealing his secret, Thomas visits Sister Agnes, an elderly herbalist who lives in a small cottage at the edge of the monastery grounds. Though not officially part of the monastery, Sister Agnes provides medicinal herbs and is tolerated for her healing skills despite rumours of pagan knowledge. Thomas carefully phrases his questions about ancient inks and their properties. Sister Agnes studies Thomas with knowing eyes and shares ancient folklore about living inks, made from rare minerals and the blood of magical creatures. She warns that all magic requires balance and sacrifice, then gives Thomas a small book written in a strange language that she claims might contain answers. As Thomas leaves, Sister Agnes cryptically mentions that creations seek to please their creators, but they all hunger for life. On his return to the monastery, Thomas narrowly avoids Brother Matteo, who questions why he visited the herbalist, forcing Thomas to lie for the first time in his monastic life. Over the following weeks, Thomas establishes a dangerous routine, working on official manuscripts by day and secretly illustrating the bestiary by night. He creates increasingly complex creatures: a fox, an owl, a wolf. Each night at midnight, They emerge from their pages, moving about his small cell before returning to parchment at dawn. Thomas discovers he can communicate with his creations through thought, feeling their simple desires and emotions. He learns the ink's limitations. The creatures cannot leave his cell, they retain the flatness and colour limitations of their illustrations, and they cannot speak aloud. Brother Matteo notices Thomas's exhaustion and the ink stains on his fingers, but accepts Thomas's excuse of extra prayer and devotion. Meanwhile, Abbot Severinus announces that Bishop Aldrich will visit in 2 months to view the monastery's manuscripts, creating additional pressure for all the scribes to produce perfect work. Thomas's nocturnal activities attract attention when Brother Felix reports strange noises from Thomas's cell at night. Abbot Severinus conducts an unexpected inspection of Thomas's quarters while Thomas is at morning prayers. Though Thomas had hidden his bestiary pages in a loose stone in the wall, the abbot finds unusual ink stains on his writing desk and floor. When confronted, Thomas claims he's been practicing his illustration skills with normal ink. Unconvinced but lacking evidence of wrongdoing, Abbot Severinus assigns Thomas additional prayer duties that require him to attend midnight services, specifically interfering with the time when Thomas's creatures come to life. That night, forced to attend prayers when the full moon rises, Thomas returns to find his cell in disarray. His illustration of a badger had emerged without him present and destroyed several official manuscripts in apparent distress. Thomas realizes his creations become more unpredictable when he's not present at their awakening. Determined to create something magnificent despite the increasing risks, Thomas uses most of his remaining magical ink to illustrate an elaborate dragon with intricate scales, powerful wings, and intelligent eyes. He names it Umbra in his mind as he works. When the dragon emerges at midnight, it's larger than his previous creations, the size of a large dog, and displays remarkable intelligence, seeming to understand Thomas completely. Unlike the other creatures, Umbra demonstrates self-awareness, examining itself and its surroundings with curiosity. It communicates complex thoughts to Thomas telepathically, questioning its existence and purpose. Thomas forms an immediate bond with Umbra, feeling less alone than he has in years. At dawn, when Umbra must return to the page, the dragon resists briefly, before the magic compels its return. Thomas realizes he's created something fundamentally different from his other illustrations, something that desires freedom and independence. Desperate to understand the full nature of the ink and its powers, Thomas convinces Brother Matteo to accompany him to collect rare herbs for Sister Agnes, using this as an excuse to search for the strange minerals Sister Agnes mentioned might be components of the magical ink. They journey to an ancient forest beyond the monastery lands, where Thomas discovers glittering black stones near a cave entrance that match the appearance of the ink. Inside the cave, they find primitive paintings of creatures that seem to emerge from the walls, eerily similar to what happens with Thomas's illustrations. Brother Matteo, increasingly suspicious of Thomas's true interest, confronts him about his secretive behavior. In a moment of weakness, Thomas partially confesses his work on the bestiary, but doesn't reveal its magical properties. Brother Matteo, rather than reporting him, expresses hurt that Thomas didn't trust him sooner and offers to help with the bestiary project, believing it to be merely an unauthorized artistic endeavor. Thomas collects some of the mineral stones, torn between relief at Matteo's support and guilt at his continued deception. Using the strange book Sister Agnes provided, Thomas discovers the monastery was built on the site of an ancient pagan temple where shamans once created living art using the rare minerals from the cave. The book reveals that the magical ink requires 3 elements: the black minerals, a binding agent made from specific herbs, and the blood of the artist to truly give life to the creations. Thomas realizes he had accidentally cut his finger while making his first drawing, mixing his blood with the ink. The book warns that creations made with the living ink grow more independent with each manifestation, and that creatures of higher intelligence, like Umbra, may eventually seek permanent freedom from their parchment prison. Thomas learns that the original temple was destroyed by early Christians who considered the living art demonic, and that the monastery was built to contain the magic, not honor God, as he had always believed. That night, Umbra communicates more insistently, sharing visions of flying freely under the moon and hunting in the forest. Thomas begins grinding the mineral stones to create more ink, mixing it with his blood and herbs from Sister Agnes. With this new batch, he illustrates small improvements to Umbra, adding details to make the dragons stronger and more beautiful. When Umbra emerges, the dragon is noticeably larger, now the size of a pony, and expresses a desperate desire to leave the confines of Thomas's cell. Yielding to Umbra's wishes and his own curiosity about the limits of the magic, Thomas sneaks the ink dragon through the monastery to the grand library. Among the towering bookshelves, Umbra flies for the first time, circling the vaulted ceiling in silent joy while Thomas watches in wonder. Their celebration is interrupted when Brother Felix enters the library for late-night reading. Though Thomas hides, Felix sees Umbra's shadow and flees in terror, screaming about a demon in the library. Thomas and Umbra barely return to his cell before the monastery erupts in chaos. The next morning, Abbot Severinus orders an exorcism of the library and increases night patrols, making future excursions nearly impossible. Bishop Aldrich arrives at the monastery a week earlier than expected, accompanied by his secretary, Brother Ignatius, who is known for his scholarly work on identifying heretical texts. The bishop announces he's come early due to disturbing reports of strange occurrences. Thomas is horrified to learn that the true purpose of the bishop's visit is to investigate potential witchcraft or demonic activity, not to review manuscripts. Abbot Severinus leads a thorough inspection of the monastery, including all private cells. Thomas barely manages to hide his bestiary and ink supplies before the inspection reaches his cell. Brother Matteo, still unaware of the magical nature of Thomas's project, but loyal to his friend, creates a distraction that allows Thomas to conceal the last evidence. During dinner in the Great Hall, Bishop Aldrich reveals he has brought a relic, a fragment of the true cross, that supposedly reveals demonic presences. Thomas realizes with dread that the bishop plans to test everyone in the monastery, including him. As the bishop's investigation intensifies, Thomas struggles with his conscience. During confession, without revealing specifics, he speaks of temptation and forbidden knowledge. The confessor assigns severe penance, including fasting and self-flagellation. Weakened by his penance and lack of sleep, Thomas falls ill with fever. In his delirium, he's unable to hide his bestiary pages properly. Brother Matteo, bringing medicine from Sister Agnes, discovers one of the illustrations, a small fox, and is present at midnight when it comes to life. Instead of reacting with horror, Matteo is fascinated, recognizing the magic as a gift rather than demonic. When Thomas regains lucidity, Matteo confronts him with knowledge of the living illustrations. Rather than betrayal, Matteo offers a new perspective. Perhaps God guided Thomas to this magic to create new beauty in the world. This crisis becomes a turning point as Thomas finds an ally in Matteo, who helps him understand that his art might be divine inspiration rather than sin. Meanwhile, Umbra grows increasingly restless in confinement, and Thomas senses the dragon's patience wearing thin. Thomas and brother Matteo experiment with the limits of the magic, discovering that as Thomas's creations develop independence, his control over them diminishes. When Thomas attempts to confine Umbra to the page for an entire night due to increased monastery security, the dragon emerges anyway, now horse-sized and radiating anger. Umbra telepathically accuses Thomas of imprisonment and betrayal. Their mental connection, once warm and intimate, now burns with Umbra's resentment. The dragon knocks Thomas aside and escapes the cell, rampaging through the monastery halls. Brother Matteo helps the injured Thomas pursue Umbra to the library, where they find the dragon destroying religious texts and illuminated manuscripts, as if attacking the monastery's purpose itself. When Thomas tries to command Umbra to return to the page, the dragon's rage intensifies. Only when dawn approaches does Umbra reluctantly return to the illustration, but not before vowing to gain permanent freedom. Thomas realizes with horror that he's created a being with desires and will beyond his control, one that grows stronger with each manifestation. The library's destruction cannot be hidden. Abbot Severinus, Bishop Aldrich, and Brother Ignatius investigate the damage, finding scraps of parchment with traces of the magical ink and claw marks that couldn't possibly belong to any natural animal. During mandatory questioning of all monks, Brother Felix describes seeing a dragon-like shadow. The bishop declares the monastery under demonic attack and orders a complete search of all cells. Thomas and Brother Matteo frantically debate what to do with the bestiary and the remaining ink. They decide to hide everything in the sealed crypt where Thomas originally found the ink, accessing it through a secret passage Sister Agnes revealed to Matteo. As they secure the bestiary in the crypt, they discover ancient illustrations on the crypt walls that match Thomas's creatures exactly, revealing that Thomas hasn't been creating new beings, but summoning ancient spirits into his ink forms. Before they can process this revelation, they hear the abbot and bishop approaching the crypt, having discovered its location from monastery records. Thomas and Brother Matteo are discovered in the forbidden crypt with the bestiary and magical supplies. They are immediately separated and confined to isolation cells. Thomas is brought before an ecclesiastical trial conducted by Bishop Aldrich, with Abbot Severinus and the entire monastery in attendance. The bestiary is presented as evidence of witchcraft. When the bishop holds the dragon illustration near the relic of the true cross, the parchment smoulders at the edges, confirming its unholy nature in the eyes of the court. Thomas tries to explain the beauty and wonder of his creations, but his words only incriminate him further. Sister Agnes attempts to intervene, explaining the ancient and natural magic that predates Christianity, but she's removed from the proceedings. Brother Matteo, despite facing his own punishment, testifies that Thomas acted out of artistic passion, not malice. Nevertheless, Thomas is found guilty of consorting with demons. Bishop Aldrich sentences him to be burned at the stake the following evening. In his cell awaiting execution, Thomas realizes with growing dread that at midnight, Umbra will emerge one final time, directly in front of his captors. As midnight approaches, Thomas is held in the monastery's central courtyard, chained to a stake surrounded by kindling for tomorrow's execution. Bishop Aldrich conducts an exorcism ritual over the bestiary, intending to destroy each illustration through sacred fire. When the midnight bell tolls and moonlight touches the courtyard, Umbra emerges from its page with catastrophic force. The dragon has grown to its full size, larger than a war horse, with wings that span the courtyard. The bishop's prayers and holy water have no effect as Umbra attacks the gathered clergy. In the chaos, Brother Matteo frees Thomas from his chains. Sister Agnes appears with a horse, urging them to flee. Thomas refuses to leave while Umbra is destroying the monastery and harming people. Using his blood connection to the dragon, Thomas mentally reaches out to Umbra, trying to calm its rage. The dragon hesitates, its fury temporarily contained by their bond. In this moment of connection, Thomas understands that Umbra cannot be forced back into captivity. The dragon must be allowed to choose its own fate, even if that means Thomas must sacrifice his creation. As Umbra rages against those who would destroy it, Thomas makes a desperate decision. Using a piece of charcoal and his own blood, he quickly sketches on a scrap of parchment, not another creature, but a portal showing a night sky full of stars and distant mountains. Thomas realizes from Sister Agnes's book that the ancient shamans created doorways between worlds using the same magic. He offers Umbra a choice: return to parchment forever, destroy the monastery and everyone in it, including Thomas, or fly through the portal to a world where it can truly live. The dragon's attack pauses as it considers, its telepathic connection to Thomas filled with conflicting desires for freedom and loyalty. Brother Matteo and Sister Agnes protect Thomas as he completes the illustration, while Abbot Severinus, showing unexpected compassion, holds back the bishop's guards. Thomas pours the last of his magical ink and blood onto the portal illustration, activating it with an incantation from Sister Agnes's book. The drawing begins to expand and ripple like an actual doorway between worlds. The portal illustration grows until it's large enough for Umbra to enter. Beyond it, a landscape of midnight mountains and glittering stars beckons, a world drawn from Thomas's imagination and Umbra's desires, made real through their combined will and the ancient magic. Bishop Aldrich, recovering from the initial attack, commands his guards to destroy both the dragon and the portal. As they advance, Umbra must choose immediately. In a moment of profound connection, Thomas and Umbra share a final communication: gratitude from the Creator, forgiveness from the creation. Umbra turns toward the portal but hesitates, unwilling to abandon Thomas to his fate. With tears streaming down his face, Thomas commands Umbra to save itself. The dragon reluctantly complies, launching through the portal with a powerful beat of its wings. As Umbra passes through, the connection between Creator and creation stretches thin, but doesn't break completely. Thomas feels Umbra's exhilaration at true freedom, even as guards seize him and the portal begins to collapse. With Umbra gone and the immediate threat removed, Thomas faces judgment again. Sister Agnes argues that Thomas's ability to create the portal proves his magic is a divine gift, not demonic possession. Brother Matteo presents the ancient texts showing the monastery's true origins as a place to contain old magic. Abbot Severinus, shaken by the night's events and his own complicity in hiding the monastery's history, advocates for mercy. Bishop Aldrich, however, remains unmoved, declaring that Thomas must still answer for his heresy. As dawn breaks, a compromise is reached. Thomas will not be executed, but instead exiled and forbidden from creating art ever again. His hands are scarred with hot iron to ensure he cannot draw, and he's banished from all Christian lands. Before being sent away, Thomas is allowed a final night in his cell, where he discovers that his connection to Umbra persists across worlds. Through dreams, he experiences fragments of Umbra's new existence, flying free under alien stars, exploring mountains and forests that exist only because Thomas imagined them. He realizes that through his creation, a part of him will always be free, even as he faces a life of wandering and hardship. Years later, a grey-bearded Thomas lives quietly in a coastal village far from his former home. Though his scarred hands can no longer create detailed art, he tells stories to local children, describing fantastic creatures with such vivid detail that his listeners can almost see them come alive. Brother Matteo, who left the monastery to follow his friend into exile, transcribes Thomas's tales into a new kind of bestiary, one made of words rather than illustrations. One night during a full moon, Thomas feels Umbra's presence more strongly than ever before. Following this connection to the shore, Thomas discovers something washing up with the tide, a strange black stone that glimmers with starlight, identical to those he once ground into magical ink. As he touches it, visions flood his mind. Umbra has found others of its kind in the other world, and something of their magic is bleeding back into Thomas's world. The stone contains enough material for one final illustration. Thomas realizes he faces a choice: attempt one last creation despite his crippled hands, or accept that his time as a creator is truly over. As moonlight reflects off the black stone, Thomas makes his decision, understanding that true creation always carries both risk and possibility.